So I've got a confession. I don't really know how to sharpen my own tools, which is genuinely embarrassing. I've been woodworking since I was a little kid, but I never really got that foundational knowledge of how to sharpen. I've tried several times to learn. I've watched videos, I've read books, and I've bought every accessory out there, but it's never really sunk in, and I've never been able to figure out a good system. This came up in the last video because I dedicated a new section of my shop to sharpening in the hopes that I will learn how. The only problem is I don't know how to use this still. But a good friend of mine reached out after having watched that video, and she said that she'd be more than happy to teach me. This is amazing because she does this for a living, and I have to believe she's actually taught several of you out there either at Maker Camp or Texas Woodworking. So I said yes, and I also said, do you mind if I film the teaching process so that you guys can learn too? Kim, can I help you grab anything?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I'm excited to see the diamond wheels.
It's a treat to get to be, just try somebody else's tools.
None of these can be messed up, which is the nice thing about them.
Well, it's perfect to have tools to practice with.
So this is my friend Kim.
Hey, everyone.
Kim McIntyre. You used to run the wood shop at Pratt. Now you're teaching.
Yeah.
You offered on Instagram to come in and teach me, and I was like, yeah please. Yeah. And then I was like, I can't waste this opportunity and not share it with other people. So I feel like I'm book smart about sharpening, but in terms of like the muscle memory, I feel like I don't have that.
Well, I think you did yourself well by starting out book smart. I think it helps to have a little bit of intellectual knowledge. Of course, then you got to put it into practice. But you're basically, to get something sharp, you're just trying to get two really highly polished surfaces that come together at an angle. And so there's a lot of ways to do that. And there's a lot of gadgets and gizmos to help us get there and a lot of methods. And my theory is that there doesn't have to be the way to do it. It's just a way. So a lot of it is spending enough time in one method to get familiar with it and to get that comfort level that you can be good at it. How about we get out both of our array of like what would be our normal like stone sharpening method.
Cool.
And so we can kind of just learn each other's consistencies and like what resources do we have to get like a blade flat on the back and which of these need that attention.
Sounds great. Okay, I'll grab my stuff, you grab yours.
Perfect.
So what all do we have on the
let's
the
do a
table?
Little tour of what's here. So I've got a lot of sandpapers at different grits just with some tape. And I tend to use these for my hook knives for the most part, and a little bit of like my gouges for spoon carving. So these will get put aside, as well as I have a strop that has a curve on it. We'll get into that. And then I actually have a really long strop so that I can just take these very long strokes. And so we'll get into that later in the day once we have a foundation. All of these flat surfaces that we have here, either diamond or whetstones. And we'll even jump into, what does it mean to flatten? So I think we have, a diamond stone, and I even see this flattening stone, so we might even experiment with both of those on my ceramic stones.
Before we get too deep into it, let's define a couple terms. Kim and I talk a lot about stones, and they're called stones because originally they're natural stones. This is a Japanese water stone. It's got a coarser grit on one side and a finer grit on the other side. These need to be flattened as you go because you gradually wear them down. These are diamond stones, which are on a honed piece of aluminum. High quality diamond stones are always flat. Low quality diamond stones are almost never flat, and they're basically useless. So these are a lot more expensive, but you save time by not having to flatten your stones. There are other varieties of stone, including oil stones, which use a special type of oil. There's Arkansas stones, there's ceramic stones. There's even the Scary Sharp method, which is a much more affordable option where you use wet, dry sandpaper and a piece of glass. These all do the same thing. It's a matter of personal preference, and it's a matter of convenience. You're gonna pay more money for something that saves you time. But just be aware that if you have any other stone other than a diamond stone, you're gonna have to flatten it every once in a while. They make specialty flattening stones, or in Kim's case, she's gonna use a coarse diamond stone to flatten her stones.
Taking the 300 grit here. can jump in. And...
Yeah, you jump in. Kim's technique for flattening is running the stones underwater and using a flattening stone and rubbing the two together. It couldn't be simpler. One thing that I would like to note, and I will show at the end, is that if you don't have marks on your stone like Kim's, you can use a pencil to make marks so that you know that you're consistently removing material. She flipped her stone halfway through to make sure that her hand pressure wasn't uneven while she was working on it.
But you're seeing where I, just had more pressure while doing my previous cut, so it needs longer.
How often do you do this?
I tend to do it depending on the length of my sharpening session, but most of the time it's just at the end of the sharpening session, and then I just let them sit out to dry.
We need a plain blade. Should we just pop
yeah,
this one out? I've literally never looked at this one. There we go.
I think that's just kind of greasy protective stuff rather than necessarily rust right here.
Okay, let's clean that off.
But yeah, we can put it to the sink and just scrub brush and just clean the gunk off.
So that's flat.
It's flat.
These are clean-ish.
Yeah, so it is not uncommon for a blade, and we can get a close-up of sort of what the mill marks are like here. You can kind of see a little bit of that line right there in the sheen level, but in general, you don't have super deep milling marks. So we might even pop out another blade just to see if we can comparison. Find one yeah.
All right, that one looks a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got mill marks. I don't know if this has ever been sharpened. There's definitely some chips.
Oh, fun.
What,
a true project.
Yeah, there's definitely a chip. Oh, there's a good one there. Okay. Now that we each had a blade, we can now start in on sharpening.
But what I'm thinking is that we start out with both of ours just on our roughest grip.
Okay.
We're going to get some water, and that's mostly just to keep the metal dust down.
Okay.
So we're not taking that into our lungs. And there are folks that really don't like rusting of their diamond stone. I do have, over here in this tote, mixture Rob Cosman sells. You just put a little bit of this yellow stuff into the water, and it's supposed to keep from rusting your diamond stones.
Rob Cosman's yellow stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure it has a much fancier name.
Kim explained that the first step is to flatten the back of the blade.
So what is important that we're actually sharpening? This way back here is not important at all. It's really just that front 1/8 of an inch that's important. So if you were a good robot and you could just hold this out here, that's all that you need to have as a reference surface on the back. I find that a little challenging to keep as balanced.
Yeah, because it's going to want to do this, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I tend to put, where I can at least hold 2 fingers on there, and I'm just smushing as much weight on top, and I am using some shoulder and a little bit of arm strength. And the lower the grit, I cannot recommend this enough to start there. 60-80 grit is not a bad way to start if a blade's never been touched on the back. I'm a bit firm believer that if you start lower, even though you have a deeper scratch pattern, you're going to spend less time restoring a blade or getting it up to speed the first time. So I'm making progress.
Still that one little spot up there.
Compare where that spot is to how deep your chip is, and if it will come out when we get rid of that chip.
Yeah.
Then we don't need to worry about it.
Okay. I still think there's a little more to go, but it's getting really close. Pretty good. We got maybe a couple spots here, but we also have a big chip. You feel it with your fingernail right here.
Which is perfect for learning how to get rid of a chip.
So we're going to try a honing guide.
Yeah. In general, what a honing guide is doing is just being a fixed way that you're not going to be rocking the blade, and a very repeatable way that you can keep setting up the bevel here.
So we've got a bunch of honing guides.
Yeah, so many that we don't even know what to do with all of them.
I own 4, which is ridiculous.
I own 2. I only brought 1.
I mean, I think we should try the simplest version, because a lot of them have, what you were saying, more convenient ways to set up the angle that you want.
Yeah.
But you also have a very simple way to do that on your jig right here, which I think that might be the best way to start with, because these are a dime a dozen.
And when you buy this, the packaging that it comes on in will tell you how far to offset these. And if you look really closely on the side, it even tells you how much to offset for your different degrees. So
that's handy.
Yeah, not something that if you weren't paying attention, you'd even know about. Make sure it's at the bottom of this carriage, so it's sitting flat there. and then flat on the workbench reference surface, and then I just extend it to that 25. And then from here, it never hurts to use a lot of Sharpie while sharpening, so you'll be able to see what's cleaned up. So I oftentimes will just Sharpie the tip, but I'll sometimes even give myself a few lines just to see like how far back on the bevel we're going. A little bit of wetness here. And I tend to always, out of habit, do my first stroke coming towards my belly. And that's just so that when you get up to a higher grit and the stone is softer, sometimes going forward, you'll catch that edge a little bit. And so it's just habit forming to at least do a first stroke or sometimes even two. But then I tend to be pretty balanced. And my motion here is just trying to keep steadiness in it. And then my next technique tip is to dab if you have Sharpie. And that's so that you don't wipe off a lot. So what we've got here is that we've taken off a lot of the Sharpie, even though I'm only seeing it polished right here and right there.
Well, let me give it a go a little bit. I want to try it. So am I trying to use the whole stone? Is that
within reason? Yeah. And you will find that it's more useful to still flip the stone end for end.
So, because we're basically only using this
the
part
back
of the
bit
stone.
is all the honing guide.
Yeah. Dab.
Yeah.
This is what you're talking about with the napkins. It's good to have.
That's where my old napkins from takeout goes. And then after this round of trying to do it, it'll be interesting for you to just run your finger along the flat that you had polished before and start to feel how big of a burr you've got.
So what is a burr? We talk about this a lot when we're sharpening metal edges. So when you're sharpening a metal edge, you are removing material. While that material is hard, as you remove more and more, that edge gets more and more flexible. So when you sand away that edge, it creates this little bent corner, and that is a burr. The burr always forms on the opposite side of the side that you're working on, and it's a great indicator of whether you've sharpened far enough. As soon as you can feel a burr all the way across the edge, you know you've sharpened it fully. When you sharpen at first, you're removing a lot of material with a coarse grit, and that creates a big burr. But as you sharpen more and more with finer grits, the burr gets smaller and smaller until it finally forms a sharp corner.
Feel that giant burr. Assuming actually
I don't
right
really
there I see a lot of dull actually
Yeah, it's pretty flat.
Yeah, can you see the shine of the actual piece of where you've been removing it?
Yeah.
And then it's dull on the very tip.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that we haven't been pushing a burr at all yet.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Now that you understand what a burr is, you can see the problem that we're having is that we have a deep depression in the middle of the blade, so we only have a burr on the outside corners. In order to get through it, it's going to take a lot of elbow grease, but we can't stop until we have a clean burr all the way across. This process takes time, especially if you're restoring blades with chips in them. And historically, this is where I get tired, bored, and walk away. But Kim has assured me that if we power through this, we will be set up so that next time it'll only take a couple minutes per tool. After about 15 minutes of flattening that front edge, we were able to get a burr all the way across and move on to the back side.
I don't know. Do you want me to go or
I'll
you're
go for
back
it.
at it?
Yeah, I want to get the muscle memory going.
Same flattening motion we were doing initially.
Now that I had a consistent burr across the front edge of the plane, I needed to flatten the back, especially because that burr was mighty. We probably could have kept it in the honing guide at this phase, but we decided to take it out because Kim wanted to show me another trick. Before we get to that trick, it's such a privilege to have Kim in my shop, and it's very rare for woodworkers to get private lessons. But if you want a similar experience, I'd suggest Woodworkers Guild of America. They're sponsoring this video, and it could not be more appropriate. If you are looking to expand your woodworking skills, Woodworkers Guild of America is a fantastic online community for woodworking instructions, ideas, and inspiration. It's full of premium step-by-step videos taught by professional woodworkers like George Von Driska and Jimmy DiResta. They teach everything from joinery to cabinet making, finishing, bandsaw techniques, jigs and fixtures, even shop safety. I've been taking their Fundamentals of Hand Tools class, and I love how approachable their videos are and how you can follow along at your own pace. And if you want to take it further, members get access to live streams, Q&As, and a whole community of makers to swap ideas and get advice from. So if you are ready to expand your woodworking skills, join Woodworkers Guild of America Premium. With their Black Friday special, visit go.wwgoa.com/Michael Ulm and get your first full year of Woodworkers Guild of America Premium for $1.49.
I'm only recommending this on plain blades. You're just gonna get a really thin ruler. You're just gonna get the most amount of distance you can so that you're giving it the smallest amount of angle. We're essentially turning this into a double bevel tool. And I'm just gonna make sure I have good pressure on this top corner, good pressure on the bottom corner.
The purpose of the ruler trick is to speed up sharpening. If you're just sharpening that tiny little area, it's gonna go really quick.
How'd we do?
Yep.
Yep, we made it to that corner and to that corner. We're gonna do this exact same thing at the 6,000.
Okay.
But we can just go straight to
The ruler?
ruler.
Oh, nice.
And I don't want to steal your joy, so you might have to do it.
Yeah, I want to try it.
We don't need a lot.
So as far out as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hold the ruler, pressure here and there.
Yeah. Is it getting shinier?
It's definitely getting shinier.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool. Well, next put it in a honing guide.
Okay. Do we want this at 25 or are we doing a second?
We're going to go for 30 here.
Okay. As we enter the next phase of sharpening, we need to talk about what is a bevel. You may have heard of a primary bevel, a secondary bevel, a tertiary bevel, a back bevel, a micro bevel, a double bevel. All these terms aren't that complicated, but it can get confusing. And depending on what kind of blade you're using, it's gonna have different kinds of bevels. So starting off, what is a bevel? A bevel is the angled surface that is ground into a blade to create a cutting edge. And the primary bevel is essentially what you get from the store. When you buy a chisel, you're gonna have this bevel established on there, and it's generally set at 25 degrees. Now that's gonna change depending on the use case for the tool, but most chisels, hand planes, they're gonna be sharpened to 25 degrees. A lot of people decide to add something called a secondary bevel to their bevels. So they will add a second bevel onto the primary bevel at a steeper angle. It has to be steeper because it can't be less steep. Otherwise, you'd be pulling material from the back, not the tip. So generally, a secondary bevel is a couple degrees off of the primary bevel. Usually it's like 28 degrees, or a lot of people just make it simple on themselves and go from 25 to 30 degrees. The reason for a secondary bevel is to speed up the sharpening process. So if you can imagine, if every time you have to take the entire length of the primary bevel off every time you sharpen, it's gonna take a while. But if you can steepen that angle, you only have to shave off a little bit each time you sharpen, and that's just gonna speed up the process. Now, another term is a micro bevel, and that's what we're doing with the ruler trick. We're essentially laying a ruler down and creating a tiny little bevel on the end. Now, Kim only recommends doing this with plain blades because they don't have to be super accurate. The way they're set up in the tool, they don't need to hit a spot, as opposed to a chisel where you're trying to hit an accurate spot. If you imagine the back bevel or micro bevel being slightly off, when you drive it in, it's actually going to kind of kick the chisel out a little bit. And that's not good for chisels, but for planes, you're not gonna have that problem. I use two different terms. A micro bevel is really just defining a small bevel on something, which you can do a micro tertiary bevel, or you can do a micro back bevel. In the case of the ruler trick, we're doing a micro back bevel. There's another term that you're gonna hear called a double bevel, and that's really common on knives, but it also can be on carving tools as well. And that's basically where two bevels come together at a peak. And the challenge of that is keeping that peak in the center, but we're gonna get into that in a minute. First, we're gonna make a secondary bevel on our plain blade. 30's there.
And mind you, my 30 is set up for a different jig.
Oh, okay.
So I can't promise that it is exactly the same for this one. But we're gonna Sharpie that tip so we know where we're going. And let's put one mark just vertical, so if we're not getting the tip, we know where we're actually hitting. And so you're gonna do one stroke just towards you, and then we're gonna look and see what we're actually removing. Yeah, let's do like 3 strokes now. 1, and then towards 2, and 3.
I can see a bright
Oh yeah,
front
there
edge.
is. Yep. So
Yeah.
now that we are actually tuned into it, now you can pay attention. Is there like one edge that isn't bright? Like, is this edge a little less bright than that edge?
I think the whole edge is bright.
Cool. Technically, you've created a secondary bevel.
Okay.
And we've pushed then a burr because we can see a Sharpie removed from all of it.
Yeah.
So next we need to get rid of that burr that we just created.
Okay.
So on the back side of the blade, keeping it in the honing guide, but just know that we have a bulkier thing, so we might have to move it to a table edge.
Like that?
Mm-hmm. A few passes there. My guess is that you've gotten rid of it. And potentially it's the tiniest bit still there because of that ruler trick that we did.
Yeah.
But we've gotten as rid of it as possible while it's still in the honing guide. So next we're going to jump up to our highest stone. We'll get it wet. And you can re-Sharpie that tip.
Okay.
This one's really important that you do that first stroke towards you.
Mm-hmm.
Because this stone's even softer.
So you could gouge the stone.
Exactly, especially with the corners.
Okay.
And yeah, let's try just 5 passes. Anything?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing if it's all the way across. I think it is.
Yeah, I can see it all the way across. And so
Alright.
now we can take it out of the honing jig. You can do 1 or 2 passes of it just being flat, and then 1 or 2 passes with the ruler trick, and it's a sharp blade. So yeah, let's see if you can feel a burr on either side of it, but my guess is it's going to be indetectable.
I don't feel
Yeah.
anything.
25 and 30. The next time I come to this blade, it won't be a great mystery as to what was done here. And then hopefully you won't have to spend all that time rehoning to get that primary bevel. So a common question is, how high should I go up with sharpening? And it's personal preference. There isn't the answer. Here I have 6,000 and 16,000. I would say in an average person's sharpening, they would probably end usually around 8,000 would be. Like I had a Norton stone for the longest time that was 2-sided and it was 1,000 and 8,000.
Yeah.
And I was very happy with that. Bent gouge here is typically just sharpened to 2,000. So, and I'm
Yeah.
getting great shavings off of that. It's just that it's a lot easier here with a flat tool and I don't mind spending that work.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like,
not that much
you
extra
did all the work
right?
down here
Mhm.
and then you quickly jumped up.
Kim just mentioned a bent gouge, and that's this tool right here. I've had this tool for a very long time, and I've never been able to get it quite as sharp as when I bought it. Just about every woodworking book I've ever read has a section on how to sharpen plain blades, but none of them ever talk about how to sharpen gouges. And I figured while Kim was in my shop, I should ask her because she is a very accomplished spoon carver. I'm hoping that she'll be able to teach me how to get this gouge sharper than the first day I bought it.
We want to keep this as close to the same profile as possible. And so we're essentially just going to do this elaborate C stroke. And so my right hand is the one kind of doing the upper, guiding and rotating. And my left hand is just helping me have a nice consistent pivot point. So just a tiny bit of pressure and helping me feel how to hold that edge and to help me with just like steady rotation. I'm just trying to introduce some consistency to all of this and make sure that I can push a burr over. So I'm going to try jumping all the way forward and see if I can push a burr with a 6,000 grit stone. I'm just going to try finding that edge and just create that arc. So we're going to stop right away and just see what I'm actually touching. So I'm touching the tip really well. But what I'm missing is that I should be doing everything in this motion. So that means that my handle needs to come down a bit more so that I'm not creating a secondary bevel. So I feel like we've done some passes here, and usually in between classes that I might be teaching beginners for 4 or 8 hours, like that would be enough at this grit. And then I would go on. But I'm not getting enough flat, so I'm going to try going down in grits. Okay, so I need to go further on the heel back here. So that's why it's worth occasionally resharpening so that you can just know what you're currently working on. And this is a good moment to show that you don't need to be afraid to just start. Like, obviously I'm not nailing it perfectly, but by the time I finish, I'll have a consistent profile. All right, so we've gotten to the point that I got rid of all my Sharpie marks, and when I feel on the inside, there's a heavy burr everywhere in there.
Oh, yeah.
It's very noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to pretty much match the grit on the inside as you just did on the outside so that we're creating similar scratch patterns. So I have some sandpaper that I think is 1,500, which is pretty close to the 1,200. And what's unique about this is that we don't have much flat reference face there. There's a big low spot right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just doing a little bit of drawing it out. At this point, we fully have gotten rid of that burr.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so now we can move up in grit. You know, hopefully it's a little easier to find that bevel that I've been working so hard on creating.
So each grit is going to develop a burr, but it's going to get smaller and smaller with each grit? Is that?
That's true.
Interesting.
And that's not important that you have a big burr. It just means that I'm still having to work other parts of this blade, and it's just the byproduct of trying to get everything even enough back there on sort of creating that big swath back there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just kind of stuck having to keep work this edge. So I find it okay to take some breaks and get rid of that burr as I go instead of building up a giant one. And then I'll show you my stropping method.
A strop is essentially a piece of leather that you use some stropping compound, which is a very light abrasive. You apply that abrasive to the surface, and then you can rub the blade along that surface, giving it kind of more than sharpening. It goes to polishing, and the polishing just brings that burr smaller and smaller and smaller, more microscopic. A lot of people use stropping to touch up blades as they go. What can happen over time is it can start to round over that surface, making it not flat anymore, making it cut worse. It's a great quick technique to keeping your tools sharp, but you shouldn't be 100% reliant on this because eventually you're going to have to learn how to sharpen.
So I'm starting on one corner and just slowly rolling. So I'm kind of doing a C, but by always moving backwards means that my tool can't cut the strop. So it's just gonna keep it alive for a lot longer. And to show you on the inside here. So slowly pulling out, using that curved edge to kind of help get in there.
One thing that I noticed is that Kim skipped the stropping when it came to flat blades, and I was curious why this was. She said it boiled down to the fact that if you need a reference surface, it needs to be flat, and stropping inherently starts to round over your blades.
I know folks that will quickly just take their plain blade off and have a Tormek and strop that for a quick second before they go hit figured wood. Have they rounded it over? Yes. But are they better prepared to hit figured wood? Yes. So you can get yes in both categories. And so I know that as a beginner, that's confusing and complicated and adds a lot of layers. And so if you're somebody who needs more like firm boundaries as to know how to move forward with sharpening, I'd say hold off on stropping if you have a blade that you need a flat reference surface on the back. Whereas this does not have the same reference surface that would have. People get really excited about the harder the leather, the more like, I got horse butt or whatever. Like
I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah. So your softer one is just going to allow for more rounding.
We didn't talk about like flat blades like this or like knife blades.
Yeah. So that one's what we call a double bevel. So it comes in on both sides. It has an angle on it. And so what I would do with that, we got the Sharpie. And you're going to see a lot of different techniques with a double bevel tool. I find that my preference is actually to put it on the side of the table. I found that my body really likes the pull stroke like a lot.
Okay.
And so I'm going to find where that spot is. See how I'm doing. So I can see it just glisten on like some of the edge, but I don't think I've got that tip there. So now I'm putting a little bit more pressure on the tip of the blade, because that's where I felt like I was a little less. Can you see that? highly shined edge the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
So now my body, if I'll make you run around. So I actually just rotate where my body's at. That way I can do a pull stroke on the other side. So now I'm just pushing that bevel the other direction. So same concept of how we flatten the back and then introduce the bevel. And then once we introduced the bevel, we kept getting rid of the burr on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we had gotten that nice polished edge, we created a burr that rolled around to the other side. And so then by presenting the other side of the tool, we got rid of that burr. And so now my method is like I did 3 strokes. Now I'm going to just do 2 strokes so that I make a smaller burr. Sharpie's gone on both sides. I'd re-Sharpie it. 1 stroke, 1 stroke. If I wanted to, I could go now up to my next higher grit. Do the exact same thing. And I'd finish off at the strop. So I'm going to stick with that pull stroke. Then pull stroke in this direction. And I might start with doing like 5 strokes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then switch to the other way, and then slowly count down to 1.
You're just trying to keep it even on both sides.
Even on both sides, and yeah, slowly lower what you have so that you're really getting a chance to polish that edge. It's a lot of just learning what your body mechanic's like. There's not, this is the way to do it. Find the way that works for you.
I'll say exactly the same thing that I just said off camera. Thanks, Kim. I'm so glad you came out. This is awesome. Learned a ton, and I'm going to practice a bunch, and I'll probably text you a few times and be like, how am I doing?
Yeah.
I'll post links to all your stuff down below. Also check out the Pratt website, and and you've mentioned a whole bunch of people, so I'll get a list from you to pop down there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I've fully enjoyed the day, and it's fun to pass this on, and now you're going to be passing it on. So like today gets to go forth, and hopefully sharp tools are out there now.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. It's not quite as intimidating as I thought it was. So hopefully that gives people the encouragement to give it a go. Thanks.
Yeah. Until next time.
Until next time. Thanks so much.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Okay, it's the next day. I'm back in the shop, and Kim did an awesome job teaching yesterday. It was 6 hours of learning, and I've learned so much. I actually had trouble sleeping last night because I was thinking about all the things that she told me, and I don't want to lose that knowledge. So I'm going to spend today touching up all of my tools that I use on the regular, getting them nice and sharp, and hopefully locking in some of those skills that I learned yesterday. The first thing that was very apparent that I was missing was a good bench hook. Kim had built one specific for her equipment, and now that I know the methodology and what I'm going to use and the space that I'm going to use it in, I can build one for my equipment. Starting with a piece of melamine, I attached a board to the bottom of it, and that's going to rest up against the table edge. On the top, I attached a couple scrap pieces of poplar using some staples. Once I had the bottom one attached, I used the diamond stones as spacers and attached the top one so that they were tight, but not too tight. This is going to be a wet area, so they will probably swell. My water stone is slightly smaller than my diamond stones, so all I did to take up that space was cut a small block of wood. After less than 10 minutes of work, I had a beautiful bench hook that was perfectly made for my space. I drew cross-hatched lines on my water stone and flattened it using my flattening stone. Once all those lines were gone, I knew that I was ready to go. I filled up my sink and let the water stone soak while I grabbed a tool to start sharpening. My Lie-Nielsen chisels are constantly in use in my shop, and they are definitely dull. So I went through the motions, everything that Kim taught me, flattening the backside, using the honing guide, flipping it over, sharpening the front, and these weren't so bad that I needed to start at the beginning of the grit. I was actually able to start in kind of my mid-range grit and work my way up from there. There were a couple that had some chips that took a little bit longer. The small ones were very quick, the smallest of which I actually filmed the entire process all the way through, and it only took me about 5 minutes. And the results were way better than anything I've ever done before. The largest chisel was the most abused and had some pretty big chips in it. I literally haven't used this in a year because I know about the chips and I've been putting off doing the work. Now that brings us to the Tormek. I have had this in the background throughout the video. Kim and I did actually go over the process of wet grinding, but it would make this video extraordinarily long. So I've edited that and put it up on the Patreon. If you would like to know more about this technique of sharpening, go check that out. The Tormek made short work of it. I continued to hone it on my whetstone, and after that, the chisels were done and better than they've ever been. I can honestly say that devoting a couple days to sharpening is one of the best decisions I've made in a long time in my wood shop. It's really changed my perspective on the tools that I have. I looked at this plane blade, which is one of my most used tools, and realized that the back has never been properly flattened. And I wouldn't have recognized this before Kim came through the shop. And speaking of Kim, there was so much great information that she provided and a lot of tips and tricks that didn't actually make it on camera. One of them was using these really small squares to check the squareness of all of your tools. I have one of these, but I've only used it to check my bandsaw for squareness. And this is a great way to identify that this plane blade actually had gone out of square, which was making it really hard for me to set it up in the tool. The other trick that was so simple and so helpful was the Sharpie trick, because it's really quick to identify if you're sharpening right or if you're sharpening wrong. And it gives you a chance to correct your body mechanics in situ before you mess up a blade. And now we can't talk about sharpening without talking about restoration, because the easiest place to start sharpening is on old tools. But be aware that the blade isn't everything. If the sole of the plane isn't flat, it won't flatten accurately. So I took the time to sand down the base of the plane until it was nice and flat, and then added in the blade. And man, did this make a world of difference. So I've continued to practice, and I've worked on a couple double bevels as well as some gouges and my Suizan Japanese chisels. And so far, pretty successful. I would say the Japanese chisels are super easy to sharpen because they've got the hollow back on them. The double bevel is a bit of a challenge, and probably the hardest to get down are the gouges, but I feel like I'm getting there. The Sharpie trick really helps with them. All of this just takes practice, and hopefully this has encouraged you guys to try it out yourself. I have compiled everything that I learned this week into one sheet, mostly for me, so that I can hang it up on the shop wall and I won't forget this stuff. But I provide it for free on the AlmFab website. Go check it out. There's a link down below. There's also a link to all the tools that I used. I don't want to promote this as like, you need to buy these tools, because I don't think that's in the spirit of what Kim was teaching. She told me a story about the first time she learned to sharpen, and it was full of frustration. She was taking a class and she'd brought her own chisels from home. They were ones that her dad had gifted to her, and she tried and tried and tried to sharpen it, to the point where she brought it home after the class and continued sharpening throughout the night, to the point of pure frustration. The next morning, she brought the chisels to the instructor, and the instructor asked if they could try and sharpen it themselves, and they tried and couldn't get them sharp. And what that boils down to is the quality of the steel. Some chisels are lower quality steel and others are higher quality steel, and you just want to make sure that you're buying, at the very least, a mid-tier piece of equipment, because some of the cheaper ones you can sharpen and sharpen and sharpen, and they will never get as sharp as you need them to be. I've got listed down below some of the brands that I like, but you can also buy vintage ones on eBay or in garage sales, and a lot of times those have really high quality steel, and you can get them for pretty cheap, considering you have to put the effort in to restore them. If you have more questions about sharpening, join me for the YouTube Live I'm doing on November 14th. We're gonna focus on designing furniture from scratch. We're also gonna be talking about the new t-shirt designs that are live now on the website. I designed these myself. They are based around the topography that I designed for the Topo tables. The Topo tees are a limited edition pre-sale, and we're gonna be announcing another limited edition bit of merch on the day of the live. So join us there. Thank you to Woodworkers Guild of America for sponsoring this video. Thank you, as always, to my Patreon supporters. You guys are the best. And a huge thank you to Kim McIntyre for coming out, sharing her knowledge. If you want to see Kim again, let me know in the comments. We'll do another video with her. She's got loads of knowledge. And I would also be curious if you'd like to see more experts come in and teach me things that I know nothing about. So thanks so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.